Wasn't going to do a video on this general subject of the the accusation that theism is basically a mental disorder, scientifically proven, demonstrated, whatever, defined. Because I don't think the psychiatric sciences have much credibility in defining very much. A video by Kevin Burnell kind of got me thinking about it, and saying, yeah, there's a point to be made here. I was especially his point that the brain sort of seeks a conclusion. It seeks an answer to questions. It doesn't like unanswered questions. So even when we can't force an answer, our brain tends to want to force the answer. Even when the facts won't allow us to be conclusive, we are essentially conclusive in that we make a assumption or presumption about what the truth might be. And certainly I think it's legitimate to argue that if you have fundamental parts of your philosophy that are completely wrong, that could be qualified as a disorder. I mean, it's obviously going to disorder your brain. It's going to disorder your functionality. You're not going to function appropriately. And so where I diverge from the rest of the argument, I think to some extent, is that I don't think it's a matter of people having legitimate or real faith or confidence in the belief. I mean, the disorder is basically the lie. It's a lie. I don't think most people who profess to be religious believe their own bullshit. You can sort of see it in their life, in their attitude, their approach. There's no evidence of devotion that goes as deep as the religion would sort of demand. I mean, if you really believed it, that's the question I keep asking myself. Well, how would I behave if I really believed this story? And it seems obvious. The obvious pops right out at you and says, well, yes, if I believe this, then yes, I would be the best religiosity there is. I mean, yeah, I'd be the monk, or I'd be in the monastery, or I'd be doing, my devotion would be complete. It wouldn't be 30% of my life or 10% of my life or whatever the number is that I will, people will make convenient concessions to their religion. They won't make the inconvenient ones. And that seems quite obvious. So I would, as I've said before, I think the disorder is that people are fucking liars, and that's the real mental disorder, and that the lie is essentially a retardation. It is a self-imposed retardation, and you can sort of see that part in the faiths that profess some of the most fundamentalism, like the Jehovah's Witnesses. They're afraid of knowledge. Mormons have the same sort of precept, that you stay away from books, stay away from the news, stay away from any competing ideology, because your understanding is so frail that you might be corrupted by some other truth, some new knowledge. And that's almost a conflict to the whole function of logic in the brain, in that it seeks this understanding. It seeks a conclusion. It also seeks a valid conclusion. And so obviously they've drawn the conclusion, they've decided the conclusion is valid even without the evidence. They don't need evidence to demonstrate or to prove their faith, because their faith is in the idea of faith. That is what they believe in. They believe in faith. They don't believe in the religion. They just believe that you need the religion to be a good human being. And so because they've drawn that conclusion, it doesn't matter. Credibility is no longer an issue for them, because it's basically the mandate is understood. The conclusion is you must have religion to be an ethical person, therefore I'm religious. Or you must be religious to be part of the club, the social normalcy club, and so you will be part of that club. You will dress and act and behave as the club demands, and you're willing to do that just because of the rewards the club gives you in return for your participation in the the club program. So in a way, getting to agnostics, or these people that are in the middle, it's for me, they're less retarded. I mean, they're less functionally broken because they're still claiming to seek a truth, but in a sense they're more evil because they are refusing to draw conclusions. They're almost saying, I won't say anything's anything until you give me 100% proof. And they're really doing that not because that's where logic leads them, but because they're still trying to defend the indefensible religion. I mean, it's essentially they've accepted that it's a cult, they've accepted that it's a fairy tale, but they still wish to cling to the idea or notion of it, and so they contrive a rationale to do that. And the rationale is that now we need absolute proof to draw any conclusions. No conclusions can be drawn without this absolute proof that they need in no other aspect of their life, but they need it in this one aspect. You must have absolute proof. And like I said, I think it's just a contrivance. It's just a mechanism. They're really theists who just refuse, again, they won't reject the idea of religion because they see value in it. And so they must retain some part of it. It's like they must keep part of it alive, even though they'll concede that logically 80 or 90% of it is rubbish. They have to salvage it somehow, because they have drawn the conclusion that it has merit, or it has value in terms of enhancing us as human beings, or our perspective. So yeah, I talked a little faster than normal, so I got through this pretty quick. So I guess I just reiterate, that the evidence of the lie, just like I said, if you just think about how you would behave if you really believed, and if you were a past Christian, maybe if you just think about how insincere and convenient your religion was. I mean, how hard did you test your faith? How hard did you look? How hard did you analyze the book you were professing to believe in? And how much attention were you paying to what it said? I mean, were you cherry picking? I mean, would you do that if you really believed? If you believed this was the Word of God, would you presume to know better than what the book says? So that, I mean, that's, you almost have to give the fundamentalists their due. I mean, the real crazy loony ones, the ones who won't even, know medical care or know this, or, put their wife in the veil and do all the other nonsense. Because their devotion seems a little deeper. But their insanity it's still likewise, that would be the definition of a mental disorder in a sense, because they have this confidence in something that is so thin in terms of its continuity with all that's logically known. I mean, the evidence is just not, there's too much of a conflict between the real world and real observations and the storybook, and there's too obvious a connection between the understandable ignorance of our ancestors and their capacity to be fooled by a story, and to draw conclusions that had no scientific merit, that were just the best they could do with the limited understanding they had of what was taking place. And that just seems so obvious. I mean, you just can't strip a religion away from its incredibly illegitimate origins. I mean, people just keep talking about it like it's been revalidated over the years or something, and it really hasn't. We're still talking about a theory contrived by people thousands of years ago who didn't know what the fuck was going on. They had no credibility as opiners on, you know, what life meant, or how it functioned, or what the relationships were, and to, you know, accept their theory as your theory. It's just so nonsensical. Like I said, so there has to be some other motive. The motive is not to find the truth. The motive is to find a convenient conclusion.